I mentioned the Auckland Men's Project, which I was one of the co-founders of. Our mission was to stop male violence. And we did a lot of public education. We went into the schools, we developed curricula. We spoke out on public policy issues in the state of California, particularly around family violence and sexual assault, but around a range of other issues as well. We invited men in the community to come in and meet with us regularly so that we had a place for men to come who were working on these issues and wanting to get involved in some way. And during all of that time, we were in very close contact with the shelters and sexual assault groups and child sexual assault groups in our particular area. So it was always with a very deep relationship to those groups. And very early on, we took on a no competitive funding commitment so that we would not go for money that was earmarked for women's programs. I want to mention a few things that other groups have done. The men in Gloucester, Massachusetts, which is pretty much a working class fishing town. The men there have come together and declared not a moratorium, but a ban on male violence, family violence in the community. So when you come into the community, there's a huge billboard, and it says, domestic violence is not okay here. They organize a once-a-year march for men to come out and community members to come out together to take a stand against domestic violence. And so they've created a way to invite men into a process of dealing with male violence and getting informed and educated about that's citywide. In Jacksonville, Florida, there's a group that put on an annual softball tournament for boys. And they invite not only boys, but their fathers and other adult figures to come, and they do a lot of education about domestic violence while they're doing this softball tournament. And people are out having fun and playing, but they're also getting basic education about family violence. The men, there's a few small communities in Maine, in small towns. A couple of years ago, there was a murder of a woman by her partner, and some of the men decided to go out and just stand silently there where that murder occurred as a vigil to bring public attention to it. And then they decided to do it the next time. And for a while, they were doing vigils. Each time a woman was killed in any of those communities, there would be a group of men that would go out and stand and witness that. Men Stopping Violence in Atlanta, Georgia started out as a batterers program, but a few years ago they realized that, in fact, that wasn't their original vision, was ending male violence, but they had gotten into the routine of doing batterers programs. Were no longer thinking about ending male violence. They were just thinking about 26-week groups. And so they reoriented their work to doing much more public advocacy work at the state level, but also to turn their groups into groups for men in the community that wanted to deal with these issues and become part of the movement to end male violence. And so their groups are not only are they open groups, they're not criminal justice referred, but when the men are in the groups, they have to bring other men from their lives to some of the meetings. And they have to bring their sons and other young men, and they have to, in different parts of the curriculum, involve them getting involved in the community. So it's turned into a community education program and prevention program, even though it's still seen, at least by the courts, somewhat as a batterers program. So they've taken the leverage they've had built up and the credibility, and they've turned it into a very different kind of place to be in the community. Let me just keep going. I'll open up for questions in a minute. Just one last thing that I want to mention is the Men's Resource Center of Western Massachusetts, which has been around for 25 or 30 years now, runs a whole network of groups for men. Some for men who are violent, but often gay support groups, father support groups, aging support groups. But they also use that as a way to mobilize men to come out into the streets for various occasions around issues of family violence. They're a very strong spokes organization in that part of the state for supporting various legislation around family violence and sexual assault. They do a newsletter now that's a national newsletter that's very powerful. And so they're a community-based focus for men to get involved with issues to end male violence. I just wanted to give you a sense of some of the kinds of non-traditional ways that men have come together to address the issues of male violence that are much broader reaching than some of the ways that we traditionally think about it. Let me open it up for questions for a little bit, and then we'll come back and do some closing and come together. So think about, I've covered a lot of different pieces. I need to say that everything that I've done, we do with men, we do with young people. There's other pieces as well that go along with it, but all of this, these are the issues we need to be talking about, whether it's us here or men or young people or men and women in the community. If we're not talking about class and the economic system, if we're not talking about power and violence in terms of race and gender and sexual orientation, if we're not talking about male socialization, if we're not talking about those things, then we're not going to have the complex answers we need to dealing with the issues of violence.